Our reading today comes from Psalm 131. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. But I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord, from this time forth and forevermore.
Thanks, James. Good to see you. Like a weaned child, that's one who's been weaned off the mother's milk, but not that long ago because you still refer to them as a weaned child. A toddler, basically, who's old enough to know when mum is or isn't around. Here's a picture of our Rory as a weaned child. I showed it to him earlier. He loved it, said, I look like a young Boris Johnson. But the point is, here he is with mum in the next picture, and here he is with dad. It looks worse if you keep flicking between them. The mum, the dad, the mum, the dad. Yep, and I'm afraid number 2 child was exactly the same, but new baby Evie, there she is, saves all of her smiles for me. So finally, at the 3rd attempt, I've got a child that actually likes me. I have calmed and quietened my soul like a weaned child with his mother. Did you hear the actress Cameron Diaz the other day? She said, I found peace in my soul when she quit acting. Using this language, this biblical language, many people think that they hate God's word, but who doesn't crave the tranquility described here? People pay good money searching for inner peace. And how hard for any of us to achieve this in our current unknowns. Well, try to have a few more toddler moments. That's the thing today. In the structure that we've been working with for these Psalms of Ascent, do you remember we see one which is distress, then helped, then home. Psalm 131 is the 3rd of its 3, but this one's not really about home. And actually, the final cluster that we'll start into next week are all about home in the New Jerusalem. So if that final trio is designed to give us a longer linger at the homeland to finish with, it might make sense that this penultimate set gives us a longer look at what it means in practice to travel trustingly, like a weaned child. We've said that the Psalms are such a gift in modeling how to be on a journey, not just to the Lord, but with the Lord alongside every step of the way. It's a relationship, remember? Well, I wonder, will you be able to bring yourself to step into the toddler-like posture in the relationship? Not the food throwing and the tantrums and the whacking yourself in the face when you don't get your own way. Verse 2 tells us what we're to copy from the kid. But I have calmed and quietened my soul like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. You know the scene, child falls over, there's tears, there's tantrums, where's mum? Here she is with a big hug. Well, it's that sense that mum's beside, so it's all okay, that David says he experiences on the inside. King David, remember, this is a song of ascent of David, and we know this was a man with enemies and family problems and failures that he had to live with the consequences of. More than that, all of the glorious promises of God's kingdom rested precisely on what became of him and his family. No pressure there then. Plenty that could make his inner life tumultuous And yet, I have calmed, I have quietened my soul. Don't you want some of this? See, it wasn't that David owned the full collection of keep calm memorabilia. It wasn't that he quit work and life just to focus on himself for a while. Nor was it that he had the best of British fortitude and a stiff upper lip. No, his hope was in the Lord, the great parent. And as long as the Lord was close and the Lord was on it, David could rest secure that everything would be okay. That's how God's highest earthly king dealt with his angst and anxieties. And it's an attitude he recommends none of God's people ever grow out of. Do you see verse 3? O Israel, as all the people of God, including us, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. You don't have to be the king of Israel to know restlessness and stormy worries. Many of us will have them churning away right now, or they come to us in the night. Could we be a bit more toddler-like? I think we see what this is recommending in practice when we hear the opposite described. Verse 1 describes the opposite of quietening your soul. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up, my eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. The idea is that there's a bunch of stuff that's high above his station, great matters that are beyond even great King David's capacity. The word marvelous isn't being used there in the posh sense of really good. It's about things that are up there in the realm of God. And I guess the temptation, if you're a powerful leader like David, is to seek to control everything as if you are up there in the God seat, able to comprehend, organize all the pieces. Problem is, he's not in the God seat. And so he tries not to preoccupy himself with concerns that are just above his pay grade. Now, we probably need to say what this doesn't mean as David encourages, commands us even to follow his example. This is not saying be passive. We lift up our eyes in a good way to the Lord. Do you remember that in Psalm 124? Proactively gazing at him. We are to lift up our eyes in that way. And it doesn't mean never wrestle through issues. David does that a lot. Asks why, how long, O Lord. Those are appropriate, legitimate questions in the Psalms. It's a relationship, after all. And it also doesn't mean stay a baby Christian. We could get this toddler illustration wrong and think, well, I won't take responsibility or try to mature or try to understand the many things that the Heavenly Parent has revealed clearly in His Word. But all of the caveats in place, don't let certain things preoccupy you on the journey when they shouldn't do. I want to suggest a few areas where we might need to calm and quieten our souls on the road to the city of God. I think this is a brilliant psalm for all kinds of anxious times, but we'll let the surrounding context drive the main places that we go with this. And I think you can see connections straight away, because verse 3 is exactly the same as verse 7 in the previous psalm. O Israel, hope in the Lord. In the previous psalm, 130, the anxiety was about forgiveness. Psalm 129, just before that, had spoken about the Lord being righteous, the way he cuts off the wicked. Great, but with all of my baggage of sin, how am I sure that I'm one of the ones who'll be fit to stand before a righteous God in his place of righteousness? Of course, we're further on in the story. We know how and why and through whom the forgiveness David was waiting for will be achieved. And yet the assurance of actually living in that forgiveness can be a real fight, can't it? The devil whispers lies into our souls. I was chatting to a cancer sufferer 2 weeks ago. This guy is one of the most joyful, strong believers you could meet. He got his diagnosis out of the blue last year, and he was honest enough to say to me, it left him asking questions spiritually. Am I in a good place with the Lord? Some of us very quickly feel the load of the plenty of sin. Can I tell my soul to rest easy when he promises plentiful redemption? We could think here in the context as well about the previous trio of Psalms 126 to 128, about ministry on the journey, growing the family, the kingdom. Many of you are so committed to reaching out to colleagues and family members and fellow students. How to do that now when you can barely even be in the same room as them legally? At church, we're trying to plan the year ahead at the moment, as we always do at this time. Do we need fewer groups this time or more? Do we need more leaders for smaller groups online? And will the groups be online all year? And how will we connect with new people in this new normal? I don't know lots of the answers to all of that. There's a lot that could worry an anxious soul on this front if you're so inclined, and to be honest, I am, naturally. Will I agitate over 2020 as just a terrible ministry setback? Or will I trust that from the Lord's higher perspective, this is all somehow something that he is using right now to keep building the house? The pictures of New Jerusalem that we've had, how can I keep calm and trust the Lord to take me to that beautiful place when my present experience is that I'm too afraid even to get on the tube because of what I might catch down there? Or the lying lips and hostility to God's people and ways. We've had so much of that in these songs of ascents. How tough will it be for our children to stay confident in the Bible in a post-Christian world? That's just a few thoughts from the context. You may have all kinds of other occupying worries in your walk right now. And we need to say that some things are not too marvelous and too great for me. We need to be diligent, make wise choices, use our brains. David knew all of the above concerns, knew they were beyond him, but he didn't just give up ruling Israel and go suck his thumb in the corner. But there does come a time in every area where you have to say his ways are higher than ours, so much more. And in a quiet, childlike way, trust that the heavenly parent has it all covered. We've been collectively humbled this year, haven't we? We're not master over the details of our jobs, our holidays, our future plans. I think it would be a huge missed opportunity for our generation to get out of this year without admitting that we never actually were in control, and without throwing ourselves on the high up one who totally is. Just imagine a toddler who didn't trust the parent in the way described here. So the toddler is in the habit of sitting mum and dad down for a chat at the end of the evening. Have you locked the doors, mum? Pulled out all the sockets? and enough money to pay the mortgage for the next month. How is that pension fund looking, Dad? And can we talk about secondary schools, please? I mean, I know I'm only 3 years old and all. It would be weird, wouldn't it? Maybe you actually were like that at the age of 3. But it's kind of a terrible sign in terms of the trust relationship. And I'm afraid that's one way of describing our broken world gone wrong. Because this language of verse 1, eyes raised high, sometimes translated haughty, prideful, above myself. That's not what I naturally think is going on when I'm over anxious about the journey. But it makes sense, doesn't it? Because if I'm not prepared to just settle down and let God be God, what does that say about who I think knows best, who I think should be in control? All of this is a huge battle, isn't it? The preacher Charles Spurgeon said this psalm is the shortest one to read, but the longest one to learn. Isn't that the truth? Not have a personality transplant, not ignore the worries, and again, not be passive. Verse 2, I'm calming and quietening my own soul. End of verse 2, it's like I'm saying to myself, there, Kev, calm down. Are you in the habit of talking to yourself in that kind of way? It's not actually the first sign of madness. Quiet soul, quiet times. We've talked about those in this series, and I know that they can be very challenging to make the space for. But how can you expect to experience anything like what's described here if you're not cultivating the regular habit of calling on him, leaving it all with him, reminding your soul of who he is? The Lord, remember, who's done great things for you, the builder of the house, the rescuer from the depths. My help comes straight from Yahweh, who made heaven and earth. And friends, you know, he is good. He is really very, very good. If you're investigating faith today, you need to add this to your list of reasons why you should become a Christian. Calm instead of turmoil. Where else will you get it? You know, in some ways, this psalm actually is a home psalm, after all. It's not about arriving in the city, but a place of contentedness that we can arrive in and grow in, even during the turbulence of life on the road. We can all grow, no matter how anxiety-prone we are. I know some very surprising people who've started to cultivate this. Can I ask, are you trying to? One year I visited some friends over Easter. Andy and Kim had a sunrise service at their church. The plan was we were all going to get into the car at 5 a.m. to go along to it, which is not my usual habit, either at Easter or any other time of the year. But I'll always remember the scene as we bundled their kids into the back of the car. I was sat in the middle, and Johnny on one side, slightly older, asking, why are we awake in the middle of the night? Why have I got my pajamas on in the car? All very sensible questions, I thought. And over on this side of me was little Dexter, the toddler, totally chilled in the thought that, well, Mum and Dad are on it and we're with them, so I'm sure it's all okay. It's a great way to be. You know, I get jealous of our little ones when I see them with this kind of contentment. Well, have a few more toddler moments in your Christian life, is the word from the Lord. O Israel, hope in the Lord.